ICQ Podcast, Episode 318, South Essex Rally Review. Well, hello and welcome, fellow Amateur radio enthusiasts, to this, our 318th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported this episode by our monthly and subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M0TCH is joined by Chris, Mike 0, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0, Sierra Golf Lima, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, November 3, Juliet India X-Ray, to discuss latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is a feature from the South Essex Radio Rally. Well, as mentioned, there are unfortunately no one-off donors this episode, but we would like to thank our monthly and subscription donors for keeping the show advert-free for your enjoyment. It's very easy to set up a donation. All you need to do is visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate, and whatever value you find in the show and prefer not to be interrupted with adverts, you pop along our way, and that helps us pay our running costs, our hosting costs, etc. So if you can think of us, it'd be much appreciated. Well, now we're going to head over to our news roundtable now, where Martin is joined by Chris, Martin, Frank and Bill to discuss the latest amateur radio news, including the ARRL expands online discussion groups and deep diving for the world's most famous radio. As always, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to episode 318 of the ICQ podcast. Tonight's news roundtable for this episode, I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Martin, and very nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. And the second person I have with me is the Leslie replacement for getting me into trouble, Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
Hello, and I don't think anyone will notice that blatant edit point there.
Yeah, good to have you, Martin.
What did you cut out? What did you cut?
Yeah, you'll get me in all sorts of trouble, won't you? Moving across the pond.
For a small fee.
Hey, all right. Yeah. Moving across the pond was also Mr. Frank Howell, who there's no chance of keeping me under control in Dayton. And I think even Dan's given up on the pair of us, Frank.
Hey, folks, I'm glad to be here with you today. And I would totally agree with you on that, Martin.
Yeah, no problems. Frank's call sign K4FMH. And last but not least, tonight we have Mr. Bill Barnes. N3JIX. Hi, Bill.
I love the dramatic pause. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, I was waiting for the Leslie impersonation.
Good evening, Bill.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Mr. Ed Durant is not very well tonight, so get well soon, Ed, and we look forward to having you back soon. Moving on to our first news story, there's some interesting ones here. The ARRL is going to expand its roster of online discussion groups for members. Now, this is your side of the pond, Frank, but I think it's good that people have got somewhere to get information. I just hope it don't end up like a rant session that some of the other news forums are. What do you think?
Well, that the league is joining the rushing herd of news groups that left Yahoo since its demise and closing over to groups.io. Now, the ARRL, to my knowledge, never had an official Yahoo group, but that's certainly the current trend. And I know in my group reader, it's just madness of things changing over by people who ran groups and suddenly realized, oh, Yahoo's dead. Yes, it is. Long live Yahoo. I think this is a good thing. It will take some of the diatribes that we read on places like eHam and put them into a more moderated forum. You've got people affiliated with the ARRL, including board members and staff members and things like that. And it will give them a way to put out at least unofficial information that is not necessarily approved by the board and be a more transparent opening. So I am delighted. I subscribed this morning to all of the group, and I set them on a full display so my inbox wouldn't be totally flooded. But I encourage anybody who's interested in the topics that the groups focus on to subscribe at least for the initial period and see if they're getting something from it.
Yeah, well, as I say, as you say, it's worth having a look at, see what's happening. Bill, your thoughts on this one?
Random trivia, in case anybody was ever wondering. The telecommunications juggernaut over here, Verizon, bought Yahoo back in 2017 for $4.48 billion. I always thought that was just mind-boggling because
your question of why.
I actually don't know.
With Yahoo, it used to be the search engine, but now we all know the search. It's even a term, isn't it?
Was that along with MySpace as well, and these sorts of?
Hey, MySpace didn't sell my private information to unwelcome third parties, so you got to respect them for that.
Just Tom.
Anyway, just Tom. Tom was there for everybody, but so because of that whole acquisition of Yahoo by the Verizon, they shut down the groups that were very popular out there, and everybody's moving over to groups.io. So ARRL already had lists out there. They had a contesting list, awards list, IARU, and a logbook of the world list. I used to be on the logbook of the world list a while ago, and I unsubscribed because it was it would go from no traffic for a long time to fill my inbox kind of stuff. However, the new ones are antenna law and policy reform, regulatory affairs, and new hams. Like I said, Frank's subscribed. He's going to keep an eye on it. The only one I might be interested to take a look at would be the new hams to see what kind of questions people are asking, because that might be interesting. And just to remind everybody, ARRL members or non-members, it's just groups, email lists, group, sign up, go read it. You'll maybe find something interesting.
Yeah, sounds good, Bill. Sounds good. Martin, you're not an ARRL member and you're this side the pond. Yeah, would you be interested in ranting and raving on either of these?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, generally, I sort of rant at rave at, some of our politicians, but that aside, Bill's laughing at that. He knows what I'm saying. I like to wonder what happened to the old news groups that we had in the days of dial-up internet and stuff. I used to love things like that.
They're still around.
Are they still around? Okay, let's have a
look.
Some of them
are radio.
But I love the idea of this. I'm certainly going to have a look at this. I mean, yeah, you get forums on social media. There's a lot of things like that on Facebook and things like that. Sometimes you get some really, really good discussions and topics and stuff. Other times you get people just giving really useless answers, and you got like someone saying, "Hey, should I buy D-Star or Fusion?" And then someone comes in and says DMR, and oh, come on, that's not the question. And you get people, there are always going to be someone giving you either trolling you or giving you wrong or unhelpful information. But when you look past that and you look at someone actually discussing a particular topic or whatever, hey, can you help me do that? And if you can filter out the helpful stuff from the unhelpful stuff, brilliant. I think this is a really, really good thing to do. I was going to say, is it setting a precedent, to places like the RSGB and the other similar groups? Is it time for them to think about stuff like that? Or are you then just making more online places for people to go, when in reality it'd be much better to try and get these as a conglomerate and get the RSGB, the ARRL all sort of involved in the same thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the problem is you can diversify, which is what the ARRL are doing, and split it up, which is good. But you do end up, I wouldn't not say the RSGB for not doing it, because somebody's going to have to moderate this. Somebody's going to have to keep it under control and stop all the whinging. But
don't get me wrong. In defence of the RSGB, I love the RSGB, and they do a fantastic job. But I'm just putting it out there. I mean, do the other groups should they be looking at doing it as well?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Chris, you're an ARRL member. Will you be looking at these groups?
I might have a look. Probably not all of them. Maybe just the ones that have interest for me. I think for me the value here is that moderation. There's lots and lots of outlets now, loads of forums, loads of social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, QRZ, EHAM, you name it. They're all there. There's lots and lots of groups. And a lot of them end up in arguments, and you get admins that are sometimes overzealous. And I think what the good thing here is we've got some, looking at the names and looking at some of the people on there, we've got some pretty experienced moderators, and hopefully they're the ones that will add the value, that they'll sort of keep it sensible. But yeah, I mean, like I say, there's already lots and lots of options to debate, and whether this just turns into a big arguing place or actually is productive, I guess only time will tell. It's only really, I suppose the value comes from what people put on there, and whether or not they take it seriously or not, or it will take upon its own personality over time. Whether there's value there or not will depend on how people use it. But like I say, I think the value really comes from the fact you've got some fairly experienced moderators who hopefully will be sensible and will steer it in the right direction.
Martin, insert the sound effect for hammer hits the nail here.
Yeah. I think it's a great one. It's worth doing, I think, and I applaud the ARRL for at least trying it. So you've got to see what happens. Moving on to our next news story. Deep dive for the world's most famous radio. Well, that sounds a bit strange, but effectively, Jack Phillips's radio, which was on the Titanic that sunk in 1912, they're thinking of trying to recover it. Chris, you go to Belfast a lot with us, and it's obviously going to be a completely different radio than anything we have up there, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is from, was it 1912 when the Titanic sank? So this is going to be a fairly, very obviously very old, very simple, I think it's a spark-based transmitter. So obviously it's been under the sea for over 100 years now, underwater for over 100 years now, huge amounts of pressure. And, if they plug it in and it works, it'll be a miracle, obviously. It's obviously not going to happen. So what state it will be in, I don't know quite know. I presume it's got a wooden box, and any kind of electrical components in there are likely to be rusted, and I'm not sure what will be left of it. But it'd be very interesting to see what it looks like. And I suppose if someone could actually, I can't imagine, given its value, they're going to want to try to make it work again. I imagine it's going to be preserved, and it's obviously very important historically as a piece of equipment. I think they're saying in the article it's one of the most famous or most important radio. But if someone could build a new one and maybe get that on the air, that would be interesting based on its design. Although, of course, with it being a spark transmitter, that might not be that popular with everybody else trying to use the spectrum. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting one, and I think there's some arguments about whether or not it should stay there or whether it should be brought to the surface. I think it's definitely a memorial. I think there was something like 1,500 people died on the Titanic. So it is a site for a lot of folks that didn't make it. So there is the argument that should this sort of thing be brought to the surface, and I'll let others debate that one. But I think it will be interesting. It'll probably go on exhibition somewhere, and it'll be interesting to look at. Like I say, I'm not sure what says it'll be in there.
Yeah, well, I think new hams to this have got to realise that it wasn't like a transceiver on the desk. It wasn't like the Radio Shack was literally built. The radio was literally built into the room itself, sort of thing. So there were various bits on the wall. I've seen photographs of that and very similar ship radios and of the time, and they were spread over quite a large area. Bill, what do you think on this one?
It'll be very interesting, as Chris said, to see what shape this is in. In the article, it talked about the wreck of the Titanic is 2.5 miles down. That's extreme amounts of pressure. So it probably has a little crushing to it. I don't know. Depends on where the Radio Shack was built into the superstructure of the ship or not. But yeah, and they're going through the process to get salvage rights, and they're going through judges in America and judges in England, it looks like, to even be able to pull this off. So it's quite a story. Very, like Chris said, it'll be very interesting to see what's left of it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Discovery Channel will probably have the rights to the video and that sort of thing, which is probably a good thing. Frank, your thoughts on this one?
Well, I love archaeology and history, and this is certainly one of the most historic radio transmitters and receivers in our history. I'd have to think about that, but I can't, on the spur of the moment, think of another one. I was around several archaeological institutes, and I do know that places like at Texas A&M University in Texas here in the States, they have an underwater archaeology program, and I do know they have some pressure chambers that they have used to take things out from under the sea, put them into a similar pressure chamber, and bring that up to maintain that pressure. Now, the pressure that's already been talking about is already probably impacted the device, and tubes are crushed and things like that. But who knows in terms of the nitty-gritty details, but they may have some ways of preserving as much as can be from what is there now. But, I just love the story, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like.
Yeah, me too, Frank. So, Martin, last words on this one. You won't be able to use this one on national radio.
Well, if you watch the film Ghostbusters, I think you'll find the Titanic did actually arrive. I wonder if anyone, has I don't know, has anything else already been recovered from the Titanic? Being the shack is also named after, effectively a shed between the funnels. Is this, potentially a wooden shack that might have already floated off, and you might go down and find that it's not there? I don't know. I'm hoping that they would know that. I wonder if there'd been any attempt to sort of repair it, get it on the air. What voltage did it work off? Frequency? I mean, imagine getting a contact to that radio. But yeah, you're right, Chris. I think with the spark gaps, you'd be very unpopular. But so when you said the world's most famous radio, the only other thing I could think of was potentially Marconi's test kit. That's the only alternative I can think of.
Yeah, good call, that one. But it'll be interesting to see how they do and how they go about doing this and whether it actually happens. But an interesting story nonetheless. Moving on to our next news story. This is going to happen in Bletchley Park later in March, for 14th of March. But there's a Build a Radio Receiver Day at Bletchley Park. And this looks quite interesting because I like the fact that it's for youngsters and members of the public. So, that really excites me that we're doing that. And I think we all should try and promote this as much as possible. What do you think, Chris?
I think it's a great one. Anything to get kids involved. I'm sure there'll be it's happening. I don't know how much the RSGB promoted this. It looks like the RCF, which is the Radio Communications Foundation, which is the kind of charity arm of the RSGB that's there to promote the hobby, are funding this. So they're giving, I think there is a fee, but I think the actual kits themselves have been funded by the RSGB or by the RCF, which is a great way of getting people involved. It looks like it's there. I think it's 2 sessions, so it's about 3 hours or so it takes to do 3 sessions. But I think, if people are going along anywhere and they stumble across this, or if they see it promoted maybe on the internet or elsewhere, and go along. So obviously it looks like it's aimed at youngsters, although there's no reason why people of any age couldn't get involved in this. Then they get to go along, they get to do some electronics, they get to do some radio, they get to actually take something away they can use. I think it's a great way to get people involved in the hobby, so I think it's a good use of that funding.
I'd have loved to have had a go at this when I was a lot younger, so that's great. Martin, your thoughts on this one?
I was going to say, can I go? These sorts of things, they just really ignite the spark, don't they? Particularly in youngsters and things. Especially when they get to put things together, you solder it, you assemble it, you make it work, you troubleshoot it if it doesn't work. So in that sense, maybe it will promote some more interest in the hobby. It says the workshop offers a short introduction to wireless communications. I mean, initially my thoughts were, isn't that the foundation course? But you never know. This is building things for that. But I do wonder, is this an RSGB thing, or is this something being promoted by Bletchley Park itself? Either way, yay, go! I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, I think this is an RSGB thing from what I can see. However, when I go back to what you just said, the first time I built a receiver and I got it working, I must admit, I didn't build one for years, and then I built this one around about 2000. I've still got it. And I run a bit of wire down the fence, down the garden. It wasn't anything special. Tuned up on 20 metres and was hearing stations from Germany. And the smile I had was from ear to ear, because I'd actually put that together. Exactly the same thing when I did it with Colin a few years later. We built the Sudden 40-metre receiver from the GQRP Club. Great devices, really good.
It's the exact same thing for me with the thing I built on my foundation course. It was an AM broadcast receiver, and we were picking up the local commercial station from Brookman's Park or wherever it was transmitting from, and I loved it.
Yeah, because you actually did it.
Yeah.
Bill, your thoughts?
Yeah, 2 workshops. They're split up, the morning crew, afternoon crew, 3 hours. At the end of the 3 hours, they're going to have a basic idea of how wireless communication works, how a radio receiver selects, demodulates, and amplifies, and be able to recognize some electronic components such as resistors, transistors, capacitors, inductors, make good solder joints, and make basic voltage measurements. That is a huge list for 3 hours, and it's awesome. Just being able to make basic voltage measurements this day is a major tactical skill for folks. So this is just a great event going on. I'm really glad they're doing this.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Bill. I was at work yesterday and watching a guy installing a closed circuit TV, and he was using a voltmeter, and the guy hadn't got a clue how to use it, and I was getting very worried, and I have to realise that it's not my job to keep out of it, but I knew more than the guy installing the stuff, and I don't work on that. But it's frightening that there are, how to use a multimeter, how to solder, skills that we are losing.
Did I say tactical skill or technical skill? I meant technical skill.
Oh, you can have tactical as well, Bill. Yeah.
My brain finally catched up to my mouth.
I just double checked the website. So this is for people between the ages of 10 and 18. So it is for kind of youngsters. I guess over the age of 10, I guess is some things like soldering, etc. that maybe people younger than that wouldn't perhaps be too safe to do. But yeah, between 10 to 18 years old. And it is the RSGB. It's happening at the National Radio Centre, so it's the RSGB place at Bletchley Park, and yeah, all looks good.
So Frank, last words on this one. I know we at our National Hamfest we have a build-a-thon. I can't remember at Dayton. Do they have a build-a-thon?
I'm sure there's something like that goes on.
Yes,
Martin, and so Bill's answered that. My perspective on this is this: I'm enamored with the history of Bletchley Park. I hope they give a little bit of a history for that, particularly if there are females attending this workshop, because as you guys know better than I've watched a series on Netflix over here about primarily the women listeners. I'm currently reading, I've just started a book by Sinclair McKay called The Secret Listeners about Bletchley Park and the role that women played. So I hope if there are young ladies there who are attending this, that they'll get a little bit of that sense of place, because they have a seat at this table.
They certainly do, Frank. They certainly do. There were a lot of the interceptors and the code breakers were ladies, but Bletchley Park, so that's good. And really think this is a good one, because anything that's practical is fun. But the first time, as I say, you build something like this and you put it on the air, you get a smile from ear to ear and a sense of achievement. So I endorse this.
Absolutely. I built the traditional foxhole crystal set with a lead from a graphite pencil and an old razor blade, and actually got it to work. So I hear you.
A lot of satisfaction doing that. Martin, you raised the next news story for us fairly at short notice, but I'm going to get you to run with it. News signals from space repeating every 16 days.
Yeah, well, this appeared on Twitter probably about 10 minutes before we were coming on there to record this. Mysterious radio signals from space have been known to repeat, but for the first time, researchers have noticed a pattern in a series of bursts coming from a single source, 500 million light years from Earth. So that my understanding is that it would take you 500 million light years to get there. Like, wow, that's a long way. And I read this and I can't help but think of the film Contact with, I think it was Jodie Foster, where they were hearing like these tones and these numbers and stuff being picked up from outer space. I'm quite excited about this. I've always, I've been fascinated by the whole world of space from when we had a talk. I think it was at the club about the space probe that went round. I think it was Saturn, and they said that the signal took half an hour to get from that probe back to Earth. And you realise that half an hour at more or less the speed of light, that's a hell of a long way, and that's still in our galaxy. So for something to be that in itself gives you such a massive idea of how big space is. For something like, we can't be alone. For something to pick something like that up from so far away is, unless they prove it to be just, ionospheric radiation or something like that coming from, some star that's burning out that happens to be built in a certain way that it's, or formed in a certain way that it's emitting these signals. I like the fact that this is potentially life out there.
I think I think it's cool, and also the fact is it's every 16 days, but that signal probably left that whatever it was out there 500 million years ago. So it was 16 days, every 16 days, 500 million years ago. Whether it's still doing it, we don't know. We'll have to wait 500 million years, I suppose. But
Can you imagine some little green man sitting on a planet far, far away with his radio, and he switches his radio on
a Morse key,
and he's either hearing a Morse key or he's hearing, this is LBC. What am I listening to?
Absolutely. I mean, it does make us realise that we are just a speck. The whole planet is just a speck. And if you look at the whole of what's out there, we are. I can't believe there's not. We're going slightly off topic here, but I can't believe there's not anything else out there that's there's no other life out there. It's such a huge
something being broadcast, and I wonder if anybody is going to be able to pick this up. If anyone's got a big enough dish that they can pick something up.
So what was the saying? It's life, Jim, but not as we know it.
Go on, sing the song. You know you want to.
No. I'm behaving, so I'm passing it to Frank, so I get out of trouble here.
Oh, because Frank will sing it too.
No, I'll sing Danny Boy. The important thing about this from an astronomer friend of mine who used to go to Toulouse, France, and study gamma ray burst, and Pat used to have lunch with him before we both retired as professors. There's a lot of these random things. They're more or less pedestrian, and they're heard. There are some that are like a machine gun. They're sporadic, boom, 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 boom. But there are not very many that have the periodicity that's predictable. And that's what's important about this one. And I saw this 2 or 3 days ago, Martin, and I looked at the paper, and, from my looking at the data and just what I could make sense out of it, was one hypothesis is this is something that is revolving around it. And so like a moon is blocking that signal for a period of time. Just one thought. But the periodicity is what makes this unique, that it's precisely every 16 days and has continued. So that's what's got them to sit up in their chair.
It could be like a planet or something that is, emitting some radiation, and the moon does break that every 16 days. Yeah,
right.
You're absolutely right, yeah.
See, but my own personal thing is I think it's IFT 256, which is intergalactic FT8 at the 256 version. Someone out there, as you said, small boy using Joe Taylor's FT8, and it just gets out of hand. But that's just one person's thought.
Or you could find that we've just got, like, one of the Astra satellites has just got a bit off frequency and it's confused NASA.
Oh, come on, boys. Bill, go on, have the last word on this one. Is it FT8 or is it not?
It's not FT8. There's so much to unpack here. So let's try to get it in order. It was Canadians that discovered this back in 2018 and 2019. So can't, place the blame on those who deserve it. No, just kidding. The Canadian group were the ones that first received the signal, and they wrote a paper about it, and it's currently out for review for academic quality. Contact. Movie was awful. Book was much better. I have that here on my little Post-it note. 8 minutes to Mars, half an hour to Saturn. I don't even know how long it was for them to send a signal to Voyager 2. Did anyone remember they had to reboot Voyager 2 a couple weeks ago? Voyager 2 had a power anomaly after 40 years. A, somebody built something that lasted 40 years. B, it's still running. And C, they were able to remotely reboot it, and they shut off some systems, brought some systems up in order just to get this thing going again, and Voyager 2 is back on the air, and it's 18 billion kilometers away, and this thing is 500 billion. My brain's starting to go crazy just thinking about the math on this one. And just like Chris mentioned, we're seeing something that happened a very long time ago. It could be a neutron star. It could be anything. So that's why I'm kind of waiting for the paper to come out to see what the theories are and how the math works out on what it could be. But Frank's right. It's repeating. It has a pattern, and that's unusual. So that's all I have on this story.
You'll be surprised, Bill, to learn that other than managing the data, the sophisticated test that they run is called a chi-square test of independence, and we used to teach that in the junior year of undergraduate school. So the whole deal there is getting the data, getting it put in the right form, and seeing, is this by chance? And it's not. So
I think what we're saying is, watch this space. Something is emitting a signal from out there. And, by the time we find out who it is, they might not exist, which is quite a shame. He's 18 billion years away. But it's interesting to know that there is something out there potentially. Right, moving to our next news story. Ed Durant put this in. He put it in a lovely colour in the document, which makes it very difficult to read, but we'll manage. The French are looking at a 3-tier CEPT radio structure, and I think both the UK and America have a 3-tier system. It's a shame that our 3-tier system doesn't align with the CEP agreement, but that's one of those things, unfortunately, apart from the full license. But who hasn't gone first yet? Bill, go on, you go first on this one.
Can I say not it? Anyway. No, the Union of Radio Clubs put together a proposal to basically implement a CEP-like 3-tiered system instead of the current single class that they have. I think the whole thing's interesting. It acknowledges a simple reality is if you had to go from 0 starting out and drop right into a full license, it would dramatically make it, the barrier to entry would be really hard. It's the same thing as over here in the States. If you had to start out and drop right on the extra exam, man, that's brutal. The extra exam didn't seem so bad for me because I had years and years of experience before it, so it was basically fine-tuning a few things. So I think that the whole idea, if they actually implement it, will be, I think it'll help, get a little more folks licensed in France, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when I took my license, you had to go straight to the full license in the UK. There wasn't the 3-tier license system in place. I was lucky because I'd done electronics at college and I worked in the industry. But you're dead right. The 3-tier system seems the worthwhile one of doing. I'm going to pass it to Frank next because I know Martin and Chris, you've been through a 3-tier license system. But let's see what Frank's got to say first.
Thank you. I look at a lot of the stories that we've covered about license structures, no matter what the categories are, as reflecting really undiscussed in many ways. How do we conceptualize the life course of a ham? That is, what should a ham candidate look like? What's a new ham? What do they know? What should they be able to do? And how should they grow? And I think very often we get into discussions about these licensed classes with an assumed idea about ham growth and maturity, and yet it's not overtly discussed. So I know if you got one and that's all you have, then you have to do the whole enchilada of material. And if you've got multiple, then you've got some time to grow it in. And I know Bill made a comment, that there was a gap there. And there will be a gap of almost 10 years in mine. I just had my 10-year renewal, and I have a general. I'll get around to doing the extra soon, as they say. So I think it's predicated on thinking about what it is we expect hams to know. And after putting that on the table, hams are not all alike. And Bill's a good example of that. He had a lot of experience. Extra was no big problem. So that's my take on it. And, I think they need to twiddle with it as they see fit.
Yeah, well, when I took all 3-year exams in one morning, Frank, I tell you what, I was shell-shocked at the end of it, but that's another story. Martin, you've done the 3-exam system in the UK. Do you think this is a good thing for the French to have a similar system?
It's got to be. One of the things I always wanted to do, it's no secret, I came from a CB background. I loved CB, and, in the end I got to the point of view that there was less and less people on it, and I just wanted more and more people to talk to. And amateur radio was the obvious thing. I wanted to do it for a long time. There were not many places doing the course in particular. At the time you had to do what was the RAE and things like that, and it was really difficult to find anyone doing the course or to get the training. And then suddenly we get these foundation courses come out, or this 3-tier system come out in the UK, and suddenly it's a lot more accessible. There's more and more clubs starting to do it. I did my foundation and my intermediate in Chelmsford. I did my advanced at Reading. That's just because they happened on days that worked for me. And I think it was a great way of getting into the hobby, because we all know that the full exam the advanced exam or the extra in America, whatever. There's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, okay, yes, it's multiple choice, it's multiple guess, but if it wasn't for the foundation, getting that foundation, using the radio for a year, learning about how these different things were applied, I would not have been able to do the intermediate. And equally, from the intermediate, using it for another couple of years meant that when I turned up to do the advanced course, and I did go and do a full-blown course, it was so much easier going in than going in right from the start. Because if I'd have had to do all three in the same day, or in the same sitting, I don't think I'd have been able to do it. For the French to add something like this, I think this is absolutely brilliant. It's going to get more people on the air. It's a much better way of getting people into the hobby. I'm absolutely all for this, and I'd be honest with you, I think every country should do this. I think that nowadays, when we've got like online, the amount of material and stuff that is online, it's not like you've got to go and reproduce lots of this material. There's no excuse for any country not doing this, really.
Yeah, well, I'm still in the process of updating our intermediate slides. But Chris, you teach with me. What's your thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of what Martin said. So if it wasn't for the 3-2 system, I wouldn't have a license, frankly, right now. I wouldn't have wanted to go straight to the full. Now, some people might think that's a bad thing, but I mean, I'll give you an example. In Ireland, they have you go straight to full. I'm pretty certain if they had a 3-2 system, that Colin would now have a full license. Because he'd be able to progress slowly rather than having to jump straight into that, that big, scary, huge amount of work for license. So I think everything's been said really. The other thing I was going to point out, go to was really if France and obviously we know that the States have got a 3-2 system. I know what other countries do. I think Australia do. We in the UK do. It would be really nice if they were aligned so that if you were, say, a foundation license holder, you could go and travel to France and use whatever they're going to call their foundation license, and maybe go to the States and use their technician license privileges. That would be quite nice. That's not happened yet, I think, because there's no alignment between what those lower licenses mean. If there was some kind of international agreement with what the thing, and obviously that would require probably quite a lot of work and quite a lot of change, but if there was some agreement as to what that would assess and it was agreed to be the same level, then potentially it would mean that someone with a lower license would be able to use their license abroad, which right now isn't possible for us, as far as I'm aware, certainly not as a UK foundation license holder. The other thing is this is only currently a proposal. It's not necessarily going to happen. It'd be very nice if it did, though. I think it would be a big step forward. And I think we need something like this, like Martin was saying, really around the world, because ultimately, otherwise our hobby is going to die out. We're not going to get people coming into the hobby, potentially. So I think anything that makes it easier to get into our hobby, the better, really. Can I throw a hand grenade into the room? Is there any benefit from there being a fourth tier, or at either end, either a fourth tier where you can use more power to do more experimentation and stuff, or at the other end of the scale, right at the very, very bottom, where you could do the very, very basics and use maybe a handheld only and just get yourself on the local repeaters?
That was raised by the VHF manager, John, I believe, from memory, and he was suggesting that somebody did like a day or half a day course, learnt a little bit about the licensing, and did that, Martin, with potentially a handheld or 5 watts or less. That was one person being a VHF manager, the RSGB's VHF manager's idea. I don't believe the RSGB or Ofcom took that up. I was talking to Pete the other day on that one. But yeah, it's an interesting subject. It was something I think that was discussed at the RSGB convention. So it's John, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, sorry, John Regno or Regnault, G4FWX. And I did know that was one of his suggestions. It was something that was discussed at the convention last time. So we'll see where that one goes. But like you say, that kind of lower than foundation license, just to get people operating, like you say, maybe very low power. Even if it's just like a handheld only, you know. Yeah, restricted to probably limited in terms of frequencies, but certainly getting people on the air. I guess that's the idea of the foundation license. This is just to almost make it even easier to do that, but obviously it's very, very limited. You've still got to do, the equivalent of 2 days worth of training. Yeah. As opposed to maybe a morning learning how to program a radio
how to operate, a bit about your licensing, and how not to cause interference.
So, I mean, as for a license at the other end, a kind of extra plus or advanced or whatever you want to call it, I guess it depends on what that would give someone, whether it would be more power or, that would very much require the regulator to be comfortable. Well, I guess actually with either proposal that the additional privileges were what's the phrase I'm looking for? Desirable, I suppose, and acceptable.
I think you can request more power if you live. So I remember someone saying they lived somewhere out in East Anglia, somewhere Norfolk or Suffolk, somewhere like that, and they were suggesting that because they were sufficiently far away from anywhere else, it's possible to apply for an experimentation NOV or something.
Yeah, so I think the way we work in the UK, and I'm not sure how it works in the States, and perhaps the guys you've had on the pond can confirm. So we can apply for a notice of variation, a kind of special permission to do certain things, and we can run more power than we normally allowed to use, or different frequencies, but it just requires you to apply for it and get that permission. Is that something similar to the States?
Well, Bill or Frank, I don't know if it is the same, but what you're saying about the licensing, guys, yeah, the top end could be covered by notice of variation, so you're probably more mileage in the low end, in fairness, but that's good. Anyway, moving on to our next news story. Normally this would have gone into our feedback section. It was a email I got from Scott McDonald, KA9P, and Scott communicates with me quite regularly, and it's always a pleasure to get an email from you, Scott. But what Scott passed on an email saying that there's been some survey work done, and it's quite frightening how this is contesters, but how the age of contesters is getting older and older and older. And if I were to start the panic button rolling, by the time we have another 2 sunspot cycles, there won't be any hams. Frank, you're big on numbers, and I know you're interested in this sort of thing. So do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, thanks. I would say the holy grail number for amateur radio is age, median age, distribution of age, what have you. And what this email is from that Scott forwarded, and I greatly appreciate him doing this, because right now we just don't really have much data. The All Asia contest, as part of the protocol, they were sending their age as a message. And so it was contesters in the All Asia contest, and they were volunteering their age. And so this person said, in the last 3 years, I have made more than 1,000 casual contacts in CW in this contest. So it's important to understand it's not all hams. It's those who have been in this contest for about 3 years and were volunteering their ages. So this person's captured these data, put it in Excel, did a little histogram of the distribution, and he has sent along some charts and this kind of thing. And I will tell you, I'm preparing a paper studying contesters, and I'll submit it to the National Contesting Journal that the ARRL publishes, that Scott writes the editor for. And I have been able to attain the membership data from the ARRL, and I've combined it with a survey that the ARRL did of contesters, as well as census data. And I'm looking at that very similarly to what this gentleman sent. I know our readers are at a disadvantage because they're hearing somebody talk about a graphic. But I will say, at every 10-year age group, from 1 to 19, 20 to 29, on up to 70, 79, and 80 and above, contesters, after you get to age 50, are uniformly older. That is, they appear more in the older categories than do ARRL members. And if that's our best proxy for all hams, and I'm not arguing that it is, but it's what we have, then what that does say, Martin, is what you said, is that contesters are getting older. And I think Scott Wright's concerned about that, which is why he invited me to prepare a paper. Now, let me just put it in this context as a statistician. If I ask you, who are hams? We'd probably get all the nefarious comment, real hams are CW ops, real hams do this, real hams do that, real hams do whatever. We all engage in what I call our windshield surveys. We see hams in the places we go, our club meetings, our ham fest, our online things and all that, where you've got pictures. And in the U.S., it's a lot of old white men at this point. But just like the Titanic story that we covered, the Titanic didn't see the whole iceberg. They just saw the tip sticking out of the water. So when we rely on what we see through our own personal windshield, we really have no idea what the whole thing looks like. So until we, in the U.S., and the same would apply to the United Kingdom, until we do a survey off the FCC license database and do a high-quality, statistically valid sample, we simply won't know what all that iceberg looks like. But the evidence that we have is much better than no evidence. So all that is a retired college professor's way of saying, yes, what we have doesn't look good. We need more and better data.
Fine on that, Frank. And as I say, you and I are in the highest bar graph there. So,
well, there's a couple little errors. Unless we've got some high-powered contesters that are between 0 and 5 years of age, he's got some what we call missing data that he still has in there because they either lied about their age. I mean, I doubt there's too many CW ops at 5 years of age.
101, 102, they would have sent it as a 2-digit number.
Okay, so you're saying that the 0 to 5 would be 102, 105?
Right, yeah.
Well, it's certainly possible in Asia, I mean, given their age spans, but that's just one little niggling point that a statistician would raise. So,
yeah, no problems. Bill?
Yeah, sorry, Chris, I zoned on your question because I was looking up, as of February 8th, 2020, the official number of licensed amateurs in Japan was 400,689. Now, I've been following JX3 XCU for over a year now, and he puts these numbers out every month, and they're slowly going down. So that either means that people aren't renewing their licenses in Japan, or they're slowly passing away. Now, in 1992, I was in Japan for 10 days. What a whirlwind. And I was told back then there's like 1 million hams in Japan, and listen to the UHF repeaters over there. There was like 1 million hams on UHF. So I believed it. It was quite amusing. But back to this email here with graphs. So from the contest data, average age according to what was sent as the contest exchange for Asian stations was 61.9 years average. Likewise, non-Asians 59.2. And the graph for the non-Asians contesters has a more uniform peak. It looks more. It's not perfect bell curve, but it looks generally to me like it could be a bell curve-ish, right around the 59.2 years as the peak.
Particularly if you're correct about the 2-digit code representing that right tail, it would be more uniform.
Correct.
It should be on that right tail.
Correct. And the drop-off after age 75, because they bucketed the data based on 5-year chunks. After age 75, it dramatically drops down, but that makes perfect sense because the world average passing age is 76 for guys and 79 for ladies now, something like that. I'm not familiar with the numbers off the top of my head. I'd have to look them up. But in general, the whole point on this stuff is, yeah, we're dealing with a hobby with an aging population. And, we talk about bringing youngsters in. We talk about bringing people in all walks of life in and to the hobby and that kind of stuff. But I think that the overarching point to all this is, in 1 or 2 solar cycles, the bands might not be packed at all, especially on contest weekends. I mean, a couple weekends ago, we had a CW contest, and it was amazing how open the band was. Amazing, I tell you. Because there was actually people to work, and they got on the radio and were calling CQ contest, and away they went. So it's like I said, very interesting, very concerning trend, but it's been discussed before, and it will continue to be discussed. And I look forward to whatever output Frank comes up with as he's doing his research.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to that as well. Marlin, what's your thoughts?
We ask if the contestants are getting older. Is that because the contests now are not as interesting to the younger hams? Do we need more and more younger hams? Yes, of course we do. But that goes back to our conversation on the foundation and exams and things that we were talking about earlier. They mentioned CW. Is that because CW isn't as interesting? How do we reignite that spark? You say in 2 more sunspot cycles, we may not have any hams because perhaps they come on air. Maybe people get disheartened and things when the HF condition is not there. Is this time we need just to start thinking about promoting other things? Weak signal modes, FT8, FT8 call, D-Star, Fusion, DMR, all the digital modes. Is it time to start pushing the other aspects of amateur radio? And a comment that that Bill just made, I think it was, it's amazing how open the band was the other day. Now, I remember we went on it was a talk that we had at the club, and it was a guy that was saying that the more RF that is going into the air, the more it sort of excited the ionosphere or something like that, he said, which is why when you get a contest and you've got everybody constantly transmitting over the top of each other, constantly going CQ, blah, 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 all the time, which is why the other parts of the HF band were likely to be more active as well, because it was doing something in the ionosphere. I can't remember the exact science of it, and there are people far cleverer than me that would probably understand that. But I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah, he was talking about us self-exciting the ionosphere by putting RF into it. But I remember the guy. I can't remember who it was, but I remember him saying that. Chris,
Martin, let me just tag it before. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Martin just raised an important point, and Bill alluded to it. Remember, this is only from CW contesters. Keep that in mind when I talk about that.
CW contesters, I'll be honest with you, I'd love to learn Morse, but I just don't have the attention span. I'm never going to do Morse. I'm never going to get my head around that. And, okay, I'm self-confessed. I couldn't give a stuff about contests personally. I'm not interested in them. They don't do it for me. I get if that's your thing, great. Go do that. Have fun. It doesn't do it for me. CW, I think I'd struggle with that.
But just remember what this reflects. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it at all, but we just need to keep that in mind as far as generalizing about all ham.
So I think what Frank's alluding to is that, this might be a certain type of ham. CW, is that more common amongst the older ham community, amateur community? Is contesting perhaps more popular with the older community? We don't know. But it's certainly something I noticed was that...
I think you've absolutely hit it on the head there.
Oh. So we don't know. So I think Frank is our resident statistician on the call here.
Imagine this. Maybe contesting and CW contesting was very important during a certain period of time, and that's been captured just like us old aging hippies still like bell-bottom jeans.
Yeah.
But they don't sell a lot of them at the store these days.
But then you think about
CW contest.
I'm sorry?
What by today's standard is the new CW contesters? What are the younger generation getting into? Okay, they're coming in from the world of WhatsApp and Facebook. What do they love to do on the air?
And see, we just don't have the data to really know. We can observe, and yet we don't know the ages. So part of it is we don't know. And you raise a question.
But from the observation front, you go to rallies, and again, you might say, well, who goes to the rallies? It may be the youngsters don't go to rallies. You go to rallies, and who do you see? It's people this sort of age, mainly male, mainly white, let's be honest, a certain demographic. Now, like you say, it could be that. And now back to Martin's point, well, what do youngsters do? Well, it could be DMR, it could be network radio, it could be some of the new technologies that don't fit into this particular characteristic. But then, I guess there's lots of factors, and I think perhaps this shows that our hobby needs to evolve a little bit. So, it's a whole other question, isn't it, really? So it's sort of evolved to try to bring in some new blood into the hobby.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. There's some figures put out there, an interesting discussion point, and we'll keep an eye on this.
Well, thanks, Scott, for sending that along.
Yeah,
I was going to say, you see what you started there, Scott? It's your fault.
No. Scott's a nice guy, Martin. Behave yourself.
Yeah.
We'll settle this over dinner in Xenia, Scott.
Yeah.
Say it tongue-in-cheek.
Okay, well, that's the end of our news stories. Bill's got a hard stop coming up fairly soon, so I'm going to let Bill go first and tell us what he's been up to in the hobby since the last time we spoke to him. Over to you, Bill.
Yep, thank you. I have multiple things going on, but the most noteworthy stuff is I got an hour to be able to jump into Winter Field Day contest. Worked a few sideband stations, worked a few PSK 31 stations, believe it or not. So I ended up working 13 stations and got the just awe-inspiring, crushing power contest score of 95. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be on the bottom of that list when it comes out. Likewise, I'm doing a rather big home project, so I didn't get to spend much time this weekend, just last weekend, in the CQ Worldwide WPX RIDI contest. This is normally one of my favorite contests of the year. I tend to get a lot of new DXCC countries because some of the folks that go on contest holidays to remote locations, they'll run RIDI. Hey, I need them on RIDI, and away we go. I was able to work. Looks like I was able to get 2 hours in on this one. Worked 30 stations. I guess my score based with multipliers is 2436. So we'll see how that works out when I sent that log in. So I end up doing some contesting, and that's the most noteworthy stuff in the last month.
Okay, Bill. Well, at least it sounds like you have been active, and that's good news. So that's a good one. Mr. Rothwell, I know you haven't been very well recently, so you probably haven't done very much, but go on, surprise me.
You're absolutely right. I've had a stinking cold. Hopefully it's not the coronavirus. But no, I've had a stinking cold. It knocked me for 6 for about a week and a bit. Needless to say, I was still working during that time. I was also still working on the radio at that time. And if you listen back to the stuff that you can find on iPlayer, you can hear me really struggling to talk for an extended period of time. What else have I been doing? I worked Martin on 2.6 gigahertz today. Everyone says, wow, that's amazing. And then you realize, actually, no, that's Zello, and that's the frequency that the 3 network use. What else have I done? I sold an old radio on eBay, and I had a sudden realize when I had to post the thing that all my config and stuff was on it, because I have several D-Star radios. I sold one of the old ones, and I thought I just wanted to take my call sign out of it before someone keyed up with it with my call sign on. And so I had a frantic panic to install the software and remove my config from it, only to find out that, of course, my new laptop doesn't have a CD-ROM drive, which I just found out about. So I had to install it on the old one to get that done. I'm still 2 antennas down because of the foxes, and we've had Storm Kira came over here during the last time that I actually had an opportunity to go out and do it, so I didn't fancy going out there. I had a chat with someone on 4 meters the other day. I was working from home, and I just had the radio on my desk next to me while I was working, and someone came up, and I make a point, if someone calls CQ on any frequency and no one goes back to them, I make a point of saying hello, even if it's just a, hey, how you doing? Can't talk very long, but, nice to hear you. Lovely chat with a guy over in Essex on 4 the other day. That was quite good. And as this goes out, as it goes out on Sunday, we're recording this on Wednesday, we went to the GB3XP repeater site 2 days ago on Friday, and we'll have to cut this together, fix the fault, identified the fault and need to return, or have no idea what's wrong with the damn thing and went to get Martin his 4th coffee. So either way, we've got a technical fault with GB3XP at the moment, and as this goes out, we will have been there and done something to it. Whether it's fixed at this point, I don't know, because for me, it's in 2 days' time. But that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, it might be a gallon of petrol and a match, Martin.
Yeah, you can have that conversation with the site owner.
All right, okay, no problems. But this species, Chris, I'm going to leave you at last because you and I do pretty much the same thing, and I don't want to recover something you're going to say. So over to Frank. What have you been up to?
Well, I've been doing a little more of the same, continuing to plant the seed initiative on library donations, getting the database and the maps and things out to the Delta Division hams, and dealing with, the ubiquitous questions of this, that, and the other. So that's been rolling out. Working with my local club, we are creating an ElmerNet, but we're going to call it the On-the-Air Net to parallel what ARRL is doing at the On-the-Air magazine and their podcast for new hams. And we're doing some design work on that. Got 4 repeaters now out in the field, back to the person that controls the broadcast towers where they're located, and they're on the air, and we hope to get those linked in the coming months into a Yaesu Fusion Wires X room. So I'll send that across the pond to you guys. You can check into it if you care to. So been doing a lot of that stuff mainly. Hadn't been on the air much except on those repeaters. So.
Right, that sounds good though, Frank. Sounds really interesting, and you've done a lot. So, Chris, you and I tend to do a lot at weekends.
Well, I got to be honest with you. To say Martin was ill and the other guys are busy, I've done very little amateur radio in the last month. I've been pretty busy. I've been up and down the country. The only thing I've done which sort of vaguely relates to radio is last weekend you and I, Martin, and a few other guys from the club went to the Science Museum. There was an exhibition there which was, its name was Top Secret, From Ciphers to Cyber Security. Now, in the UK, we have an organisation, part of the government, called GCHQ, which is kind of similar to NSA in the USA. So they kind of do with cryptography and code breaking and this sort of thing. And it's the 100th anniversary of GCHQ this year. I think it was originally called the Government Code and Cyber Score, I think it was called. So we got renamed to GCHQ, I think, after the Second World War. But it was the 100th anniversary of their foundation, so it was really taking us through the history of, they had things like the Enigma machines from the Nazi era and the equivalent of various other countries. They had some modern day stuff. One thing I found was quite fascinating. They had the Queen's telephone and the little key that she had. This is from the 1990s, so some fairly modern equipment for a museum. With the key, which had on HM the Queen, so the Queen, it's the phone that she would use to make secret conversations with, or secure communications with other parties. So really fascinating exhibition. And of course, this was just a part of the Science Museum. Now, if you've never been to the Science Museum in London, it's pretty massive. It's got a huge amount of stuff in there. After we went to that exhibition, we went up to I think it was the second floor where they had, because I've not been for a while now to the Science Museum, so it just changed quite a bit. And they had an exhibition there, a more permanent exhibition there for communications. And there was some amateur radio stuff there. There was also quite an old-looking amateur-made television, which was kind of rather cobbled together in a case there. So really interesting place. We didn't get to see even a quarter of what was there because we weren't there for very long. They've got aeroplanes and things there and all kinds of stuff to look at. A huge amount of medicine stuff and fascinating place. It's free to get in as well. So if you're ever visiting London, the Science Museum is a great place to go visit. So that's kind of probably the only thing I've done recently, and that isn't really relating to radio that much. You and I, Martin, are once again going to an HMS Belfast, I think, in a few weeks' time. So that should be good. And that's probably about it for me, really. Not a huge amount, I'm afraid, to talk about.
No, but we did see, the Science Museum, we did see part of the rugby transmitter coils, didn't we?
We did. It's a very good point. So one of the kind of showpieces they had there was that, so in rugby, there used to be a large VLF transmitter station. I think it was mainly used to talk to submarines, but I'm not that certain, to be honest with you. A part of that, there's a huge coil, which is on this big wooden frame there, which they've recovered, and it's in the Science Museum. So there's a bit of a showpiece there. And there's a bit of a thing about what they were doing on that site. So that was quite good. If you think about the sort of calls we're having in our ATUs, this thing is about, 10 foot tall or something, maybe even bigger. So a significantly huge piece of equipment for, you can imagine the sorts of signals that would have been involved in sending around the world for quite a large period of time.
Certainly was. So all good fun though, Chris. I enjoyed it, and thanks for organising it. What have I been up to? Well, I was showing one of the guys at work APRS this morning, and he was absolutely gobsmacked at that amateurs do this sort of thing. And I was showing him vehicles you could track and weather stations. And he's a sailor as a hobby, but I was saying the number of weather stations you could around the south coast, don't use them as absolute gospel, but you can get a very, very accurate picture of what the conditions are at different parts of the country by the weather station. So he was quite excited about that, which is good. Edmund, Mrs. B and I went to the South Essex Amateur Radio Society's rally a couple of weeks ago, and we managed to get a good few interviews with various people at the rally, some interesting ones of some of the vendors and some of the special interest groups there. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We got invited to a couple of other rallies. Firstly, we got invited to the Brats Rally. Brats stands for Bredhurst Amateur Receiving and Transmitting Society, and they have a rally later in the month which we have an invite to. So on Sunday the 23rd of February this year, Mrs. B and myself, and I think Mr. Rothwell may join us if he has the chance, are going down to this rally to meet the general public. We'll be there as a special interest group. If you're interested in going, I'll put the details up on our website, and it's also, if you look for Raynham Radio Rally, you have no problems in finding all the details you need. They've got a map, the address, a call-in station, which is GB4 RRR, or Romeo, Romeo, Romeo. It takes place on the 23rd of February, as I've said. Look forward to chatting with some of you there. And that's one of the things we're starting to do more of. Later in March, we will be at another rally down in Kent for Hamzilla, which I'll tell you more about nearer the time. So we've started to do a few rallies, but if you have a rally and you'd like us to attend, you're welcome to invite us. We can't attend everyone because the presenters pay for this out of their own pocket, and it's not only financial, it's time restraints as well. So as long as we can do it with time restraints and financial restraints so we can get there, I'm sure we'll pop along. So kind of that's what I've been up to, boys. Right, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me. Frank, thanks for joining us. K4FMH.
Thank you, and I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We thank Bill, but he's had to leave us because he was on a hard stop, Mr. Bill Barnes, N3JIX. So thanks, Bill. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard M0TCH.
Thank you, Martin. It's been the usual fun evening we have on these recordings.
Yeah, I enjoy them immensely, as you well know. And Mr. Rothwell, Mr. Martin Rothwell, who
Hello.
You can get me into trouble now because we're finishing.
You know, that's the only reason I turn up for these things, purely and simply to get you in trouble.
I know, but never
Give
mind.
you your fourth cup of coffee.
I haven't had a fourth cup of coffee yet, but it's getting close. we'll be on
the third. That's not my responsibility.
Yeah, we'll be on the hospital roof on Friday afternoon before this podcast goes out. So I'll see you there. Thanks, Martin, for joining us. I'd like to say 73s to you all, and don't forget, this is not the end of the podcast, just the end of this section. 73.
73.
For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. Start off with the first news story here. Graham Cowan, Golf at 7, Lima Mike Foxtrot drops the light. Letting us know how much he enjoyed the show and he listens to it during his car commute. He asked us to do us a favour by publicising a RSGB trainer event. It's taking place hosted by the Telford and District Amateur Radio Society, so it's going to take place in Telford in Shropshire. It's the first of 6 being run throughout the year, and it's a chance for amateurs to help the future of amateur radio by training more amateur radio operators. They need to recruit more trainers across the country to obviously bring on board all the amateurs we're hoping to help to grow the hobby. And whilst many clubs and their members offer foundation, intermediate and full amateur radio license exam training, how can they improve their teaching performance and perhaps become a registered assessor by attending the events? And this event takes place on March the 21st in Telford. Basically, we'll pop the information link on how to get involved in this, but there's a trainers at rsgb.org.uk email address, or contact Graham Cowan, who's the Telford Exam Secretary, and they'll be happy to take on board there. We'll put all the links and information you need to do that on, of course, ICQpodcast.com. Continuing the training theme, in the States, there's a new amateur radio extra class license exam question pool coming effective from the 1st of July. and this will be in place until 2024. It's been released and is available at the National Conference of Volunteer Coordinators online. So the extra class pool incorporates significant changes compared to the current question pool, which expires on the 30th of June. The number of questions in the pool has been reduced from 712 to 622. The result being 239 modified questions and 49 new answers, including 139 questions removed due to changes in what was felt to be an abundance of out-of-date questions, whereas areas of new technologies and subjects have been added. So it looks like this has been updated to obviously reflect the current state of the hobby going forward. We're about a month away from the greenest day of the year, where St Patrick's Day, 17th of March, comes around, and it's an opportunity to turn the bands green. So there's an award that will be on the air. St Patrick's Day award will be available. It's going to run for 48 hours from Monday the 16th of March until Tuesday the 18th of March. Stations worldwide will be on the air for celebrating what I hope will be a relaxing opportunity to work the bands and turn them green for St Patrick's Day. To register for the award, you need to visit stpatricksaward.webs.com to get involved. Now we'll head over to our features episode, which I feature on the South Essex Rally. So as always, guys, hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Hi guys, for this episode I wanted to give you a roundup of a rally that Edmund, Carol, and that is Mrs. B, and myself attended. Now we went over to South Essex, to the South Essex Amateur Radio Society's rally on Canvey Island. It's their 35th rally, so they've obviously been doing something right for a long, long time. We had an invite from Tony, Richard and Dorothy to come over and just meet the public and say hi. Not too difficult to get to. It's pretty much off main roads and well signposted on the way in with a great talk-in station. Once we arrived, we found that the rally was spread over 2 halls, not a problem, and we managed to set up table and start to talk to a lot of people. And very, very interesting rally. Essex is very, very active as an amateur radio group and a county. So hopefully you'll enjoy some of the interviews we got. I'd like to thank Tony, who organises this rally over at the South Essex Amateur Radio Society's rally at Canvey Island. You're the organiser, Tony. When I saw you first thing this morning, you were looking a bit stressed. But in fairness, as the day's gone on, it is a great rally, and you have every reason to have a smile on your face.
Yeah, it's gone very, very well. You always have issues at the beginning of the day, but the idea is to try and deal with those without without too many problems. Make everybody happy, make them all feel at home, get the traders in, get them all set up, and then of course let the public in to come and enjoy the show.
Yeah. Well, I've wandered round and I've spoken to a few of the traders, and I've also spoke to a number of people who know who we are, and everybody seems very happy. It's quite a laid-back rally.
Well, yeah, this is the way we want it. We get a lot of independence here. We don't get too many of the larger companies. There's Hayden's here, of course. They've come along, and we were supposed to have CCOM, the new antenna people, here. Unfortunately, last minute they weren't able to make it, which is a shame. But never mind. These things happen. So yeah, we've got about 90 tables that people are using. I'm guessing we're going to be somewhere close to last year's figures. Last year it was about 480 to 500 people came through the door.
Yeah, so very well organised, I'll be honest with you. We thoroughly enjoy being here today. I thank you very much for inviting us. And guys, put this one in your calendar for next year. Keep an eye out, because the South Essex Amateur Radio Society will actually have this on next year, I believe.
Yes, we will. It'll be the 36th year next year it's run. I haven't done all of those, thankfully. But it'll be the 36th year. Let's hope to make it bigger and better. Everybody's been great. Thank you for coming along as well and joining us this year. And hope you'll be back next year.
we hopefully will. So thank you very much, Tony, for your time. I know you're busy.
Thank you very much.
Well, hi guys, I'm at the South Essex Amateur Radio event out here on Canby Island, and very interestingly, BBC Essex have turned up. Two lovely people. Come on, tell us who you are and what you're doing.
Hello, my name is Leona Bridges and I'm one of the presenters on the BBC Essex Quest.
Yes, and I'm Barry Lewis and I'm the other presenter on the BBC Essex Quest, out and about.
Well, I'd actually like to thank you very much for coming over for the boys. It's my first time here, but I can see the actual enthusiasm in your face. So congratulations, thanks for coming over. It's a great hobby. It's a shame more and more people don't know about it, but great for publicising it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were very lucky because a lot of people listen to the show over this county, and we've had someone call in today from an oil rig in the North Sea. So there's a lot of people listen, and we like to spread the word that radio isn't dying. It's a really important thing to keep alive, and like the Morse code here today, it's an important thing that people know about and learn about, and it's people like us that need to keep those things alive. Isn't that right, Barry?
Well, it is, yeah, and we've attended events like this before as well. It certainly appeals to the geekiness in the two of us as well. We love stuff like this, and going around here, there's so much to see around here. Yeah, Bakelite. She loves Bakelite, and I love the valves and the transistors and all the little bits and pieces. Absolutely wonderful place, and a huge queue outside to get in as well. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's well supported. Well, as I say, I got the tip from Pete Sipple, who you well know because he's been well involved with you guys. He works on a podcast called TX Factor, which is video. We predominantly do audio at the ICQ podcast, but and listeners often say, "Oh, we're at war with each other," and I say, "No, the hobby's too much fun for that."
Yeah, no, it's not war, is it? I mean, we're all in the same boat together. Well, probably a private ship boat as well, isn't that right?
Oh, that's where I started on the Ross Revenge on Radio Caroline in the past, and I met Pete Sipple, of course, when we both worked at Essex Radio, Essex FM years ago. So goes back a bit.
Yeah. Well, I never got out to Radio Caroline yet, although I know this is the BBC who we're talking to, but I did listen to it in the early years when I was young.
We'll forgive you, it's fine.
I grew up listening to that. I mean, really, it's through listening to Caroline that I'm doing this now.
And that's why Barry's really good at talking Dutch as well.
Yeah, natuurlijk.
Listen, guys, I know you've got a very tight schedule today. Thank you very, very much for your time. Most appreciated. You're both from BBC Radio Essex. Once more, give us your name so that people know who you are.
I'm Leona Bridges.
And I'm Barry Lewis.
Thank you very much, the pair of you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye. Well, still at the South Essex Ham Radio Rally. Thoroughly enjoying it. Called up with an old friend of mine, Pete Sipple from Essex Hams. Got your name right this time, Pete, so there's no giggling and falling around on the floor. Good to see you, Pete.
It's great to see you. Thank you for coming. We got you into Essex for a rally. Brilliant. Good stuff.
You certainly did. And I was talking to Edmund on the way over. We really have to do one of your events. But it's got to be this summer when it's warm and not wet, I think, for the travel we're going to do.
Well, the one you want is the summer solstice, 21st of June. We start when the sun comes up, we finish when the sun comes down, and we are outside a pub. What more can you want?
Well, I think that was the one. Edmund was suggesting. But no, it's great. It's good to see that you got a nice stand here. You're promoting amateur radio in Essex as you always do. And as I say, I think you're having a good rally, aren't you?
It's a very, very good rally. I mean, we've got a pretty low-key stand here. So Essex Ham, we come along and support this rally. We do a lot of PR to try and get people along. We had the BBC down earlier, which was great. So that all kind of helps. But we're here just so that people that maybe outside the area, maybe learning at home with our online course, just can come and put a face to a voice. The number of people that have come up and said, I've done your online training, or I've seen your videos, or I listened into your net. It's brilliant. So it's really nice to come to an event like this and just shake an awful lot of hands, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, and I must thank you for getting me an interview with the BBC this morning. That was that was most appreciated. And what I've noticed is, and I'm not necessarily because we've been promoting it on the podcast, and hopefully it is, but there are a lot of people from Surrey and Sussex that are now over here starting to do a bit of work and starting to see us.
That is true, yes. As I say, it's really good to see you. I mean, you've really lucked out. You walk into the door and there is ICQ. So you've got the prime slot today, which is great. And I'm hoping you get the same as me. A lot of people saying, I listened to your podcast, or even, could you tone the shirts down a bit? Something like that.
No hope we're toning the shirts down.
But no, it is good, and that's what I love about these rallies is you get so many groups together. I mean, I can see the RAIBC over there. I think that's their first time at this particular rally. You've got the vintage guys, you've got a good lot of dealers, loads and loads of stuff to try. I'll point you at one of my colleagues behind me in a minute who's doing this UK mesh network, showing off some new technology that we're all involved with. So I love this rally. I really look forward to this every year. It's not hard work. It's great to see so many people. And nice to see you and Ed for the first time as well.
Yeah, it's good. Now, on the shirt front, I'm going to let a secret for our listeners and you. Colin bought 2 shirts for us each because obviously at rally we washed them out and hang them up and they drip dry and they're ready for the next day. A certain M1 that you're very close to at the moment went home and forgot to take his off and started doing some work in the shack and dropped a blob of solder onto my shirt, right? And so I ended up with a big burn in the middle of my shirt. So I have another shirt that Colin got me, which the supplier supplied it the wrong colour, which is even brighter orange than this one.
Oh, blimey. I thought you were going to be talking about the hygiene issue with shirts, because that's always the joke with rallies, isn't it? I brought my own bit of product just in case anyone that does have an old shirt. But yes, no, I mean, you can't miss you guys, can you? Wherever you go, it's, hey, ICQ. I'm in a boring grey, you're in a very fluorescent orange, even matching the mic, of course, which helps.
Well, we try, and the same with somebody said to me, why have you got an orange mic cable? And I said, 2 reasons. Number one, Colin would tell you it's for corporate reasons. For me, it's for safety reasons. People can see the cable, they don't trip over it on the floor. So that's, we want it nice and bright. But yeah, orange was just something we fell against accidentally.
It makes an awful lot of sense, I have to say. So we went with the grey because it was the only colour that sort of contrasted the green. We didn't want white because it gets messy. Any dark colour loses the colour. But I mean, you guys, you're so noticeable wherever you go. And what, of course, is great is everywhere we go, you're there. So it's not a meeting if we don't tend to meet up with each other, which is good.
Yeah. And as I say, from a UK podcast perspective, I think we work fairly close together and do very well. So good to catch up with you, Pete. Wish you every success with Essex Hams. It's a shame that Kelly or your lovely lady are not here today. I'm sure Kelly does exist because Edmund tells me he's met her, but I've never met her.
Yeah, bless her. Yeah, she's not as around as we'd like, unfortunately. And the lovely Sarah can't make it today. But really good. And I must admit, the one thing that I have been pushing for ICQ is the grow, disband and merge talk at the convention. That was such an excellent session. I don't think I got to chat to you at the very end of it, but that discussion about clubs, where clubs are going, the future of clubs, and the chap from Somerset with the idea of hubs, not clubs, really, really brilliant. A little disappointing maybe that a couple of people were a bit, how dare people impose their rules on us and all the rest of it, but I think getting that kind of message out there that clubs do have to change and evolve is brilliant, and I've pushed an awful lot of people to the recording that you did. So I'm hoping next year at the convention, something equally controversial. I'll be looking forward to it, and in the front row.
Well, 2 things on that. I haven't been invited back yet. I do have something in the back of my mind that's very controversial, but it's only because I am passionate about amateur radio. And secondly, you talked about people there that there were 3 people who were quite negative initially. Unfortunately, the camera didn't pick up that there might have been 2 or 3 people being negative and 30 plus shaking, nodding their heads in agreement. So that, I think, didn't get picked up by the camera as much. But all in all, I enjoyed it. I know you did. And we've worked hard, and it's been quoted all around the world. Our American cousins have picked that up as well. So, and I still think it's a very, very good idea, and I'd like to see it come to fruition. So there you go, Pete.
But well done for putting it on. You gave that chap a voice. He's put his idea out there. A lot of people listened. And the fact that video was online, 2 or 3 days after the event, brilliant. And a lot of people have watched it and commented. So well done for highlighting that kind of stuff. Great.
Yeah. Well, video's not our main media. Video's your main media. But in fairness, we do the odd one. And as I say, hopefully that was good. So thanks very much for your time, Pete.
Excellent. Enjoy the rest of the rally, and see you for a bacon sandwich later.
Hopefully. See you later, Pete. Well, still at the South Essex ham radio event of the day, and I'm with Stuart from VMARS, who I spoke to a couple of years ago up at Newark. Good to meet up with you again. It's Martin, by the way.
Yes, of course, Martin. Yeah, lovely to see you as well, and so many people here at the rally as well. And of course, this rally at Canby, we've been coming here as an organisation, VMARS that is, for several years now, and it's always nice to see the Essex hams and people from the southeast.
Certainly is, and so it's my first trip over, but you've been very, very busy here, it looks like, on your stand, and looks like fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, already this morning we've had, I won't tell you who they are, but we had 3 people that paid their subs. That brings them up to date now. We've had 3 new joiners as well, so that's good, and it's more than average for what we normally do at a radio rally. But as you can see, we have all the information here on the stand. We also have a display of vintage equipment that my colleague Pete G7DXV has put out this morning, and we do try and vary that equipment on display. But it's a great interest to many of our members, and thankfully old and new. So we have young people looking at it and exploring the possibilities of homebrew and research into historical equipment. And we also have people who are long in the tooth, amateurs, that know this equipment from the 50s and 60s. And that's where I glean all my information from, apart from some of the military kit that I know. Of course, we're also into classic ham gear as well.
That sounds good to me. Well, I unfortunately I can't show the picture, but your lovely lady took a picture of us while we were nattering a minute ago, so I assume that'll be on your website soon.
She never puts that camera down. In actual fact, it is the VMARS official camera, so we have to keep using it. Otherwise, the VMARS treasurer will want to know how it's been justified to make that initial expenditure. But no, I tell you what, we've taken quite a lot of photographs in our time, not only of the VMARS stand and its associated members, but also, generally speaking, of the Amateur Radio Rally, where most of the rallies, I must say, the organisers do a fantastic job, and there's an awful lot of work involved. Many people don't understand that, but we're very grateful to them.
Yeah, well, it's my first time here. Hopefully we'll get another invite next year. I'm sure we will, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It is well organised, very well organised.
Absolutely, it is very well organised, and you alluded earlier to how busy we are. We do go to quite a few amateur radio rallies. Of course, our last expedition, we've done several rallies, but last year we did, of course, Newark, and there was another organisation that did some interview there. No names, no Factrill, TX Factor, but they're all very welcome, and we get to see, of course, different sets of people in different parts of the country, which is the best thing, because VMARS, we are a national stroke international society, but we don't have a home. You know, we're sort of floating, if you like. But when you consider that at Bletchley Park, back in 1999, we started with 42 members for that inaugural AGM. We're now 568 people. Awful lot of people. And with a lot of talent, I can tell you, Martin.
Yeah, sounds good to me. And, no problems with the TX Factor. I was chatting to Pete a little bit earlier on about it. But if I wanted bragging rights, at least I could say I got you first the year before.
You did indeed. But and this is the perils of being the public relations officer for VMARS. You're always in the frame there, but I must pay tribute to my fellow committee members, treasurers and publications editor, newsletter editor, archivist, membership secretary, and individual ordinary members of the committee. They're all very busy in their own right, and they've all got a role to play within the organisation, as indeed many of our members do as well. We've got a lot of people behind the scene that don't want to become a member of their local radio club or VMARS in particular, but they will help almost on a weekly basis when questions crop up on one of our 2 online VMARS groups. But if people are interested in VMARS, please take a look, as we deal with anything ex-military, vintage classic ham gear, KW Heath kits, and of course we've had a couple of events recently. We did a Heath kit net actually yesterday morning, and we had about 9 or 10 DX100s on the air in one go, And we think that's a bit of a record. We're going to obviously do a write-up about that soon. But other such equipment, KW, Eddystone, lots and lots of different things. But it's not just limited to that side of radio. We also have the research factor. We also have other forms of communication, semaphore, Morse telegraphy, line equipment, telegraph equipment, you name it, VMARS are involved with it. And that's why over our broad membership database or our membership base, we have a wealth of knowledge. And we're very fortunate in that. And in 50, 100 years' time, long after I'm gone, long after other people have gone, we'll still be going. I know we will.
Yeah, well, I hope you are. And I won't be here in 100 years' time either. But no. So it's been great fun. And it's been great fun catching up with you. I did once work you on air when we left the McMichael rally, and you pulled up alongside me.
Isn't that funny? I heard this call sign and I thought, I know that voice. And I'm driving I was going actually to Aldershot, and the following day was our Regimental Association Day, Grenadier Day, where I met our new colonel. So, yes, but I recognised the voice, and I saw you on the microphone, and you got the shock of your life when you looked to the right-hand side and saw this fellow driving the other car. But it was great to hook up with you, Martin.
Yeah, it always is. Listen, Stuart, thanks very much for your time. I'm sure we'll catch up with you either at Newark or McMichael. Or maybe even somewhere else again this year. So have a good rally.
You're very welcome, and we'll see you at a radio rally soon.
Will do. Well, I've just found Andy, or rather, Andy's just found me from Hamzilla, and he's over here with us today. But you've got your own rally that's coming up soon, so tell us about it and what you've been up to.
Yeah, thanks. It's on March the 29th. It's in the Discovery Science Park in Sandwich in Kent. We've got some big traders there. We've got ICOM attending, Yaesu attending, SDR Play, Mike from CCOM Antennas, one of the new guys is attending. We've also got Andy SDR Play, he's going to be there. Rocket Radio's confirmed their attendance, so it's going to be quite good. We've got a good sell out there, so it'll be well worth attending.
It certainly does, and I hope Andy from SDR Play brings Carol, because she's a lovely lady, and so's my Carol who's next to me. So I know I've got a few Carols, but I hope Andy brings her, because she's fun. But it does sound like a really good rally to come to, and I thank you for the invite, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no problem. It'll be great to see you there. So, yeah, it'll be good to see you there. I'm looking forward to it.
That's great. So today, Andy, you've been to the rally. Have you bought anything interesting?
I've bought a couple of bits, just some small project stuff that I'm working on at home. Yeah, so it's I've enjoyed myself here. You're always made to feel welcome when you come here, and I've had a thoroughly good time. It's been brilliant. And of course, we've been talking about Hamzilla. Lots of people are going to be returning. They've said that they were there last year, and what a fantastic time they had. So yeah, so it's been a good day out for me today.
Yeah, it's good. And I'm actually starting to enjoy rallies again because they seem to be more social these days now. And we meet up with lots of old colleagues and friends, and the tea, coffee, and the sausage and bacon rolls are a bit good that Dorothy did this morning.
Yeah, I like the idea that these rallies now seem to be reverting back to more of a social event, so people can all come down. And even if they're not buying anything, there's no excuse not to come down, have a cup of coffee, and and they'll see Dorothy there. So I do like the social aspect of it, and you make some good links. It's nice to put some faces to the names when you're working them, and just catching up with them. And I love it. It's great. I've had a thoroughly good day here today.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to stop you from wandering around, but Andy, thanks very much for your time, and we will see you at your rally.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Well, hi guys again. I'm still over here in Essex. Caught up with Richard, who has probably either got a passport or been let over in good behaviour to come north of the river, Richard, haven't you?
Well, it's been good behaviour. I was quite lucky. They haven't collared me for a passport yet, as I come from Kent.
No problems at all. Well, we're enjoying ourselves over at the rally. I can see Edmund wandering about. But what are you looking forward to doing today, Richard?
Well, I'm after a couple of bits for some Raynet projects, and if I can find a nice old Yaesu FT2600 or a Yaesu FT1500, they'll go towards a Raynet packet digipeater for Kent.
Yeah, that sounds good. And Richard's call sign as he tells me, GA, it's the best. ITB, GA, ITB. So,
I
good
can't
one.
do anything about that one. You blame Martin for saying that, not me.
No. We like to chat to people and get a bit of colour and find out what you guys have been up to.
Not too much. For me, this has been a busy weekend because coming here for this rally. But yesterday it was the first day at my local club's foundation course. And for my sins, what have they got me teaching? Technical basics. So that's the one that frightens everybody.
Yeah. I often teach the technical basics one. That's a difficult one because there's a lot to cover, but you can't teach them electronics in 2 hours.
No, and especially with the new syllabus, it is very much, yes, it's still conceptual, as I say, but it is very much more in-depth. The knowledge required is a bit deeper, even at foundation. So you've got to be careful to teach them, but not frighten them.
Yeah, no problems at all. Well, our colleague Mr. Betts scared the hell out of a couple of our M7s when he came to give a talk at our course. But it's all right. I told him, well, I'll cover it when I teach them the next intermediate course.
Well, yeah, and we were due to have Mr. Betts visit us yesterday to give everybody the words up. Unfortunately, he had to go to an exam standards committee meeting, which doesn't bode well for any of us.
Okay, well, as I say, Alan's a lovely guy. I haven't managed to wind him up too much, so I think he'll forgive me. Yeah, thanks for giving us a quick chat today, Richard, and nice to see you over here on the rally.
Yeah, thank you very much, Martin, and nice to see you chaps here. And I noticed there are a few orange shirts hanging about, so I'll leave you all to it. Cheers, Martin.
Yeah. Well, I've just seen a guy I know quite well, Andy Maish, and G4 ADM, who saw the microphone and disappeared very quickly. So we'll say hi to Andy as well. And I've managed to catch up with Andy. Andy, your call sign, and what are you displaying here today?
Hello, yes, it's Andrew, and it's Mike Zero, Oscar November Hotel, 1 Newham. And today I am showing the little project that I'm building for a amateur radio mesh data network. So a little website's been built called ukmesh.org with all the information on there. And the idea is to repurpose some old 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi antennas with the software that's been developed by a group of amateurs in America called ARRL, which stands for Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network. And it allows you to connect things as you would over the internet, but without using the internet. So it uses 5 gigahertz in the amateur spectrum part of the band. So we can do things like VoIP telephones, we can do things like web pages, emails, you can run a WinLink server and get emails out then through HF, you can do CCTV cameras, all the things that you would normally do with a computer over the internet, we can do without the use of the internet.
Well, that sounds interesting, and in many ways, if we have a natural disaster, the internet's going to go out, the phone system goes out, the internet's going to go out as well, because we're more and more reliant on it. So this could be very interesting.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's where my sort of interest in this project started, being a member of RayNet. We were looking at ways that we could link some DMR repeaters together without the use of the internet. And that's how this is used very much in the States, where they have similar sort of amateur or ham radio operators provide emergency communications. And as we move forward in the future, there are new different ways in which we can communicate, data modes, IP, voice over IP. And all those things can be provided using this in the amateur frequency band. So we're not relying on the internet, but we are connecting, so we can connect DMR repeaters together without the use of the internet.
Sounds very, very interesting. Now, the $64 million question. How close have each node got to be for it to work? I suppose I can answer that one myself, but I'm thinking, let you answer that one.
Okay, well, you'd be surprised that the chaps that I've been working with out in the States, now, okay, they've got a tower, and as we all know, that bigger is better out in America. They've got a tower, and it's up the top of a mountain, but it's getting 45 miles on a 2.4 gig. Now with the 5 gigahertz, I think we can expect, well, I've done tests already, and I'm getting about 6 or 7 miles across Chelmsford, no problems whatsoever.
Okay, so looking at the equipment you got, and 4 or 5 miles is certainly worth doing because in a built-up area. Now, looking at the devices you're using, they're the Ubiquity antennas. Are these outside ones, or are they just ones you've got here for show?
No, these are fully, I think it's IP65 rated external antennas. They're all devices that I bought secondhand on eBay or on Gumtree or online for, you know, £15-20, and then just reflash them with the free software from Arden. And so it doesn't cost a lot of money to get involved in this project at all. You can do 3 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz. There's a lot of different bands that this equipment's available on.
Yeah. And in fairness, I actually have some access points at home which are Unify, and they are pretty good equipment. So not had the experience of the ones you're using, but if they work half as good as the ones I got at home, they're probably pretty good.
Yeah, as I say, I've done a couple of little tests now from home. I've got one of the little, it's called a Ubiquity Nano. So it's a little antenna. It's about sort of the size of 2 mobile phones, self-contained, 120-degree antenna, 600 milliwatts, operating in the 5 gigahertz amateur radio band. And as I say, I can get down to our local field day event field, which is 6 miles as the crow flies, and I can get a signal no problem between the two there.
So that's something that's going to be really useful for field day events and things like that. Now, what's the take-up in the UK? I assume it's quite low at the moment, but, you know, it's only a matter of getting this publicised and people are getting excited.
That's the key, isn't it? With a mesh network, it is about how many people you can get on. And as more and more people join, then the size of the network and the coverage will grow. I've only been sort of starting this project at the beginning of the year, so it's only just over a month old as we're talking today. But we've already got 9 nodes set up. So it's covering areas such as Basildon, Chelmsford, Wickford, Benfleet, a new one to go into Southend after today. So it's really about getting more and more people to join up. We've also got a remote, what's called a mesh island. So there's a few up in North Yorkshire that I'm working with as well. A 2E0 amateur up there has got one of these nodes working. So we're linking in with him as well via an internet tunnel. Now, of course, that doesn't provide you the resilience should the internet go out. But general day-to-day amateur radio experimentation, we can link up with somebody else up in the north of the country and have the same communication fun with them as well.
Yeah, well, I know that, and I was talking to Richard earlier, and he was saying that he's not interested in anything that's connected to the internet. But in its early stages, you know, having internet backbone between groups of mesh networks means that at least you can actually get things going. And as you develop and more people get on, you become less reliant on the internet backbone, don't you?
Exactly, yeah. There's what we call sector or point to multi-point. So these type of antennas, the nanos, are primed for this. So it's got a 120 degree spread. So you point it sort of north and you'll get everyone from northeast round to, you know, northwest within sort of a 5 to 10 mile range. So you may pick up 3 or 4 different stations. Now the idea is then if there is a bit of a longer hop, what you do is you use a very much more directional dish antenna to point, so single one point to another point. And you kind of provide like a backbone link then between your local mesh node and the remote mesh node. And once you've got that point-to-point link, then you can communicate as if you're sat right next to the other person. So yes, at the moment we will build and rely on the internet. The ultimate aim will be as more and more amateur radio operators join the mesh, then we won't need to rely on the internet and it becomes more and more resilient.
Yeah, well, that's good news. And I know my colleagues in the States were telling me about this sort of thing was starting to happen over there a little while ago. But it's nice to know it's actually happening over here. And looking at your gear, it's not out of the realms of most amateurs if they want to get involved to have a go at this.
Completely, yeah. I mean, you know, if you're going to start building your own gigahertz radio equipment, it becomes very, very complicated, waveguides, etc., which is probably out of the scope of a lot of people, me included. But this is using very cheap, second-hand, commercial-grade equipment that you can buy off the shelf, and all we're doing is putting a new piece of software on to run the Arden network. So it is almost plug and play. There's a lot of people interested, a lot of people out there helping. There's the Arden Mesh website that's available, and also the ukmesh.org website that I've set up that's got a forum on there, and people are coming in and asking questions and being able to answer and help each other out.
Yeah, well, that sounds good, Andrew, and thank you for your time. You did mention ukmesh.org is where to go to get more information and to contact you. I assume there's a contact page there for you.
Yeah, contact page there, or my call sign M0ONH, and my email's on QRZ.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, Andrew.
Thank you.
I've managed to find a seat to sit down, and I've made Dorothy sit down and take the weight off our feet, because we've been on our feet all day today. But Dorothy, you haven't had much chance to look around the rally because you've been in the kitchen, haven't you?
Yes, I have. We've been in the kitchen cooking the bacon and sausages for the lovely bacon and sausage rolls here at the Canvey Rally.
Yeah, and I've got to tell you, they were phenomenal. Your sausage, Edmund and I had sausage rolls, but the bacon rolls looked equally as good. And you had a team of, what, 4 of you in the kitchen today?
I think so. There's at least 4 of us. There's 2, 3, 4 or 5, yes, in the kitchen, and other staff out on the serving the actual rolls and sausages and cold refreshments, hot refreshments, and bits and pieces as well. It's quite a good, busy team, and we all get on really well. It's been fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Good fun as always. Tiring, but good fun and so worth it.
Yeah. Now you must be a little bit disappointed being locked away in the kitchen. Being a licensed amateur, you haven't had a rummage round the rally. Does that disappoint you just a little bit?
Slightly. It's the only rally I can't be there when it's fairly early and have a good look around and for bargains, etc. I obviously have to wait until I get a chance to come out of the kitchen when it's calmed down a little, so we can come out and have a look then. So I did have a wander around, but yeah, it's a shame I can't get out straight away. But then there's all the other rallies throughout the country that we visit that I can make up for it at instead.
Yeah. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And your husband Richard, we sometimes call Mr. Dorothy just to wind him up.
He does, yes, I know. He likes it really. I think he's very proud of the fact that people know me more than they know him.
Well, he said he was going to get you to do the talking. He's been pretty busy as well. We thoroughly enjoyed ourselves from the ICQ podcast being here today. So I'd like to thank you and Richard, because you were predominantly the people that started contacting us to get us over here. And I think we've had a good day.
Excellent, thank you, and I'm glad you come today, and I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been very helpful for you, very fruitful for you as well, and I'm really glad you all come. It's been lovely to see you as always.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think if I heard Tony right, he said I'll see you next year. So so hopefully we will be with you again next year.
Good, I hope so too, and I hope you'll come back, and I'm glad you enjoyed the rally.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dorothy. You've worked very hard today. Now we're going to let you put your feet up in a minute and take the rest of the afternoon off.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you everyone that's come today, all the organisers, all the stalls and all the customers and everyone as well, and happy hamming everyone.
Yeah, thank you. As we come to the end of this discussion of the rally, I hope you enjoyed the few interviews we did chatting to some of the traders, vendors, special interest groups here at on Canvey Island in Essex. We had a thoroughly good day. We've invited back next year, and I'm sure unless anything major happens, we will be there. So congratulations to the organisers. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The South Essex Amateur Radio Society's rally on Canvey Island, which will happen at a date determined in around about February 2021. Hope you enjoyed this feature.
The ICQ podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Well, Dad, what a fine feature there. Much fun had there at the South Essex Rally there, and great to hear the feedback that you picked up there from the rally.
Yeah, it was certainly great, Colin. It was very, very interesting to get a lot of feedback and from the organisers who felt we did a good job for them. So great fun. We've started to get Mrs. B out a bit. She's out with us in a few weeks' time as well. So all in all, we thoroughly had a great time, and we've been invited back next year, Colin.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. We'll have to get that one certainly in the diary there. Certainly, let us know your events, what's going on. If we can attend, obviously we will. Or one of the guys local, maybe close to you, may attend but it's always good to hear what's going on. And we do try and get out and about, obviously, as much as we can. Catch up with everybody from there. So thanks a lot for the guys from South Essex for their kind invite. Now, feedback's come in since the last episode. A couple of bits here. So Richard Howell, I think it's pronounced, call sign November Delta 4 Zulu, pops a comment on in relation to a news story recently, and this is in relation to the ARRL filing an RM11828 that they made. It's allowing tech and novice privileges they do not deserve, says Richard. He says he doesn't support this, this filing. The whole idea was incentive licensing to work your way up to earn operating privileges. To just give operating privileges to those who do not deserve them is a bad idea. It goes against the rules used of many years of studying and working your way up higher operating privileges. And furthermore, it is not fair to the many thousands of amateur radio operators who studied long and hard to earn their privileges. Richard is suggesting it seems to him that the ARRL is a failing organisation who wants to use this proposal in the hopes to increase their membership and allow them to continue. Thanks as always for the show, he says. So, Richard, some interesting points there. This is always across the board. I mean, there's many people that are finding ways maybe of trying to generate interest in their specific part of the hobby and to generate maybe more people to enjoy and be there available for contacts, etc. And I suppose this is the problem as well. If you've spent all that hard work, time, money and effort to get those privileges, to see them handed away is probably difficult as well, isn't it? As people look for ways to try and grow in the hobby.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult, Colin, and I don't want to sit on the fence on this one. In fairness to Richard, one of our news stories was the fact that when we look at CW contesting, the age group of CW contesters is getting older and older, and it did look like in a couple of more sunspot cycles around in 22 years' time, there probably ain't going to be any hams around unless we do something. Now, that's only CW. That wasn't the whole thing. My case, okay, well, I hold a full license in the UK. I hold a full license in the States. Like yourself, I hold the extra, Richard. However, I never did Morse. Now, and in fairness, I think it's a great thing, Morse. It puts me to sleep, but I still think it's a great thing. So, am I wrong for not doing Morse? Maybe in some people's eyes I am. When I passed my UK license, I got a B license in the UK. It was straight to full license, B license, and then you had to do your Morse to get an A license. Now, once Morse got done away with, I was then given HF privileges because I didn't need Morse anymore. Quite interesting, Richard, though. I didn't go on HF for a good 2 years after they gave it to me, because I was having so much fun on VHF and UHF, and still do, and will spend most of my life on VHF and UHF. So I hear where you're coming from, but to keep our hobby alive, you've got to keep, you've got to keep injecting new things into the situation. So, yeah, you and I worked hard. Don't get me wrong. We both worked hard to get our full licenses. And, it's something you aspire to. Once you've got it, I don't think I'm any better ham than, say, a foundation or a technician. There are some very good operators out there and probably operate better than me. But it's horses for courses. Sorry, Colin, a long-winded answer.
Yeah, I think you said something there actually quite interesting in the middle of it as well. Maybe when we give access away, no, that's probably not the best terminology. When we allow access maybe for a lesser qualification, for a better term, lesser study group where it would be, maybe something that we can give as well to those that actually have achieved it to maybe lessen the blow. Maybe that's something that people maybe should be thinking of, rather than just maybe say a dumbing down race to the bottom of the barrel sort of thing. Could be something interesting for the national associations and the regulators to think about. Right, next bit of feedback now. Kevin Utsi, I think it's pronounced, Kilo X-Ray 4, Kilo Uniform, drops mail. Said he's listening out of order, so can we forgive him? He's just listened to episode 315 and personally wanted to say that he loves the ICQ podcast. He's relating back to a news story we were talking about when we were chatting about the podcasting market in general and what's going on, obviously, with new shows and shows leaving, etc. And he said, in his opinion, he found that the ARRL's The Doctor Is In show, it wasn't with the information, but it was too short. And he said, granted, I don't mind short, but they seem to not fully develop the content. And he guessed that is what happens when you're worried about the money. But kudos to you guys and girls for really discussing things, and I learn a lot. So 73's from Kevin in the UAVA. I think it's I can't remember VA is now as a state. I think it might be Virginia. Might be wrong there. So good feedback there, Kevin. I say from my end, I suppose. I mean, look, the problem with podcasts is, and we see this all the time, is people will do podcasting for whatever reason they do podcasting for, and some people do it for the reason of sharing information and doing what we do, where we're obviously an independent listener-supported show, and others will do it to sell you a product or sell you memberships or to sell you advertising, whatever it be. Who knows why people do what they do for, but obviously formats are formats as they go. And I suppose the great thing is for people like Kevin and everyone in the Hobby Dad, there's lots of content and even more developing content now that they can certainly get their fix of content, I say, between everybody's shows.
Yeah, you're dead right. And it is interesting. If you went back to our very early podcast, Kevin, I think they were about half hour, 35 minutes when it was just Colin and I before we grew the team. And now, today, when there's 5 or 6 of us on the news roundtable, most people have got a fairly good answer and a discussion point. So our news roundtables often go an hour to an hour and a half, somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half. And I'm told that people enjoy that because there is the content, there's the banter, there's a bit of humour, and generally we're imparting knowledge. But it is difficult. It is difficult to, say, expand things out quite long. And we've always worked on the principle of the podcast is the length of the podcast. You know, one episode might be an hour, the next one might be an hour and a half. If the quality and the content is there, we run longer. And as I say, with the more presenters and the international flavour we have, our podcasts are now getting out to a good hour and a half most times, aren't they, Colin?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think we've always had, as I say, no restriction in, I suppose, what we can achieve in terms of, as I say, space and etc. It's always been more about, as I say, content and getting that content out for you. So it's great to know, Kevin, you appreciate what we do. And as I say, I know a lot of people do. Not only the monthly and subscription donors, the one-off donors, etc., send us their donations along the way, but people who drop us a mail, stop us at shows, you know, like just chatting and saying hi, how you doing, and even those that put their hand in the pocket and buy you coffees when you see them. You know, it's all those feedbacks that let us know that we're doing the right thing, say for you guys, and that you're enjoying what we're doing from there. Well, unfortunately, talking about donors, we had no one-off donors this episode, so we'd like to continue to thank the monthly subscription donors for, as they doing their bit for paying our way and keeping the show advert-free. I'd like to thank you, Dad, as well, for producing the review there of the South Essex Rally, and say much fun had there. We've got our news roundtable guys to thank as well: Chris, Mike 0, Tango Charlie Hotel; Martin, Mike 0, Sierra Golf Lima; Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel; and Bill, November 3, Juliet India X-Ray. So great to have those guys on board there. You can keep update what we're doing in the meantime, of course. Visit icqpodcast.com. Sign up for the newsletter there, or join the Facebook group. Our Twitter handles at Colin Butler and at M1LB. We'll keep you up to date with everything that we're doing from there. Right, well, I think let's just run through everything from there, Dad. Anything else from you that we'll be doing the next fortnight time, or is it time to go rummage in the cupboard?
Right, from me, Colin, just a couple of things. When I was down at the South of Essex Amateur Radio Rally, one of the interviews I did was with the BBC. Unfortunately, the mic was a little bit hot because I knocked the VR level on the recorder just before I did it. And although I had headphone on one ear, I didn't pick it up. So I apologise for that. I've tried to reduce it down in volume. Interestingly enough, it was the one with the BBC that I promised to another podcast that they could use the audio. So I've sent it to them, and don't give them too much of a hard time if you hear it on theirs as well. Moving forward, well, Mrs. B, Martin Rothwell, and myself will be at the Brats Rally, which is the Bredhurst Receiving and Transmitting Society, and that's being held on the 23rd of February this month. The location, I'm going to give Colin all details, put it up on the website, but the location is down in Chatham, or Rainham, in the Chatham area in Kent, North Kent. There'll be a talk-in station, lots of bits and pieces there. We've been invited along as a special event station. If you do come along, please say hi and talk to Mrs. B. She isn't an amateur, so don't ask her anything technical, and you won't be told naughty words. Hi. But in fairness, no, Mrs. B will be there, along with Martin Rothwell, M0SGL, and myself. And hopefully we'll get some interviews with the traders, the special interest groups, and generally support the rally for them. So that's what we're up to, Colin. And I'm better go and make Mrs. B this cup of tea now.
I really think you should, and have a good rummage in that cupboard there for chocolate biscuits. And as I say, look after from there for you, won't you? Right, well, guys, we're going to bid you all 73s, and we're going to catch up with you all again in a fortnight's time. So look after yourself, guys. 73s.
Yep, 73.